Hey folks, this and every podcast is brought to you by Claypot. Claypot is a Cantonese-styled restaurant that, well, surprise, surprise, utilizes a clay pot. What that means is that it really just seals in the actual flavor inside the dish, and you can order so many different things. I mean, you can get things like eel or pork belly, and oh man, that sounds great. It's owned and operated by a very close friend of mine. And really, its mission is to bridge the generational gap in terms of culture and to bring people together and to share that culture, which I think is beautiful and, let's be real, delicious. This podcast guest is a very close friend of mine. Ermias and I talk about the cultural difference between the United States and Eritrea. And it was really interesting to see that there was a mutual feeling that there was a loss of emphasis on hospitality, respect, and the exercise of imagination. Midway through the podcast, we're also joined by my roommate Josh, but it doesn't get too cluttered or anything like that. It's actually just leads to even more interesting developments, and hopefully you can get something out of this conversation. I certainly did. It's just, I love this.
So the whole thing started in like 1885, around 1885, when the Italians they bought a port city from the locals. And they slowly started going up the coast. They got to the main port city, Massawa, and that's from where they started colonizing the country, and they started going towards the west, and that's actually going up the mountains. And they got all the way down to Eritrea. They fought a couple of wars with the locals. The Italians were fighting with guns, while the locals were fighting with like spears and knives.
Holy shit!
My great grandfather was one of the fighters.
Oh man!
And crazy thing is, as soon as the wars ended and Italians colonized Eritrea, they used all those warriors. They were actually hired by the Italians to fight for the Italians. They were called askaris, and they fought for the Italians in the War of Libya. And that's how the Italians actually conquered Libya, and there was a lot of Eritreans fighting for the Italians, and this is like something that's not actually written in the history books, but they took the Eritreans all the way to Italy on boat, and you can even look it up on Google. Just type in like Ascari in Roma, and
Wait, how do you spell that? I mean, like
Ascari is ASCARIINROMA, and you're gonna see the reception they got when they landed in Rome, and I'll tell you, a lot of people were like infuriated with that, because they've never seen black people, and black people just barge in, and they're like the heroes of the country. Next thing you know, they start going to bars. All the girls start liking them. The girls start hanging out with them. Next thing you know, you see like babies coming out left and right. The Italians were going crazy, so they actually like imprisoned a couple of them, and there was like kind of a protest going on in between the soldiers. And the craziest thing that happened, in the end, when they were about to leave, they had to do a march, an official march in the city with all the soldiers. The main guy, he was protesting over the arrest of his companions. He actually stepped in front of Mussolini and his major generals, pulled down his pants, and shot right in front of them.
Holy balls!
Like, this is not in the history books, because this is like total embarrassment to the fascists. They will not take that lightly. They like completely erased it. This is like stuff that my aunt told me, that like her great grandfather sat her down and told her. And like you hear stories of like the Eritreans defying the Italians back then. So the whole story goes, and the Italians, they stayed in my country until 1941, and they were kicked out by the British when they lost the Second World War. British came in, and they took everything that the Italians built. The Italians actually like experimented with my city and with my country. They were building factories left and right. It was super strategic location in the Red Sea, and they had like major plans for my country. They're actually about to put the main Volkswagen factory that's in Egypt and in Brazil. It was supposed to be in my country, but then the Ethiopian emperor didn't want it to be in Eritrea. He wanted it in Ethiopia, but then everybody was like, it doesn't make sense in Ethiopia. It should be in Eritrea, and that's how everything broke down. But we had the longest cable car in the world in existence. Until today, there's no cable car longer than the one we had, and it was dismantled in 1951 by the British. So the Italians did a lot. Like, they built our whole city, and crazy thing is, Mussolini, whenever some architect had like a brilliant idea to build a building that was like weird or whatever, he was like, just go and build it in Asmara. If it looks nice for people like it, you can build it in Rome. So there's an area in my city that's just wonderful buildings. It's just
It's like
ridiculously beautiful buildings.
full like experiment, like
Oh
because
yeah,
they could just do whatever they wanted, right?
This is like in the 1920s, 30s. It's called the Art Deco movement, and now, you know how they have UNESCO World Heritage sites? It's usually like one site or like one building or like a common area. My whole city is a UNESCO World Heritage site
Okay, wow.
because of what the Italians have done.
So
and-
okay, but like, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but like
No, go
they're
ahead, please.
like the British came in and they like dismantled a lot of like what the Italians had put up, but there's still some leftover like
Oh yeah,
architecture or something, right?
I mean, it didn't make sense for the British to ravage the city, destroy buildings and all that. They took most of the infrastructure, so they took like most of the railroad system that was built in Eritrea. They took most of the trains, the cable cars, a lot of like equipment and stuff from the ports, and they shipped everything to like India, Pakistan, and all that. And they were there for around from 1941 until 1951, and at that point we were supposed to be like a sovereign nation, and we went to the UN, and it was basically to decide either to leave Eritrea as a free country or to federate it with Ethiopia. And Ethiopia was like a major global power back then. So they actually managed to
But like, so then like, what happened in history? Like, did you end up like going with Ethiopia or like the
obviously it went to Ethiopia because back then it was Emperor Haile Selassie, and Ethiopia was the only country that wasn't colonized back in the days. So they had some reputation in Africa. He was the most respected emperor in all of Africa and maybe even the world. He lived such a lavish life. He had like cheetahs all around him. He was sitting in a golden throne. If you look up Emperor Haile Selassie, you've probably heard him all over like Rastafari songs and all that. You probably don't realize, but he was considered a god by Jamaicans. Like when people say I'm a Rasta, people don't know that they're actually saying his first name. Haile Selassie's first name is Rastafari, and that's where Rastafari comes from. And they say it's the legend that goes that he visited Jamaica and they were like waiting. They had a prophecy that a rabbi was going to come from the motherland, and the motherland was considered to be Africa and Ethiopia specifically. And when he landed, there was a drought in Jamaica for a long time, and as soon as his plane touched down, it started raining. So people were actually like,
oh my god,
yeah, he's the fucking god. So that's why like you hear all reggae songs, you'll hear at least Jah Rastafari, Haile Selassie, you'll hear them repeat it. So like you see the reputation. Like, why would anybody give Eritrea to 2 million people or so that were like not relatively known, instead of like 60 million people with one of the better known emperors in the world? Yeah. So we were federated with Ethiopia in 1952, and then it went on up until 1961. We were just a federation, and if I'm right, on September 1st, 1961, the first shot of the freedom fight, of the Eritrean freedom struggle was shot, and the war went on for 30 years until we were independent in 1991. What's crazy about all of this is Eritrea was a country of around, I'll give you a ballpark number, at most 2 million people. not even. The rebels were made up of around 10,000, and at their most, I'd say we're like 200, 300,000. We started with scratch, nothing. You can say we started off with like rocks and rocks. But next thing you know, Ethiopia was a country of around 60, 70 million people. And they were first supported by the Soviet Union, and after they were dismantled, they were supported by the US. And we managed to kick them out of Eritrea.
Like, how did that, like, all that history you just like unloaded on me? How does that how does that affect your country?
Man, you can see it. So since we were independent in the beginning, it was all good. The economy was flourishing. It was peaceful with Ethiopia. They were using one of our ports. The main cause of all of this is because Ethiopia wants access to the sea, and the people nowadays. So Ethiopia, it was all peaceful in that until 1999, when Ethiopia really were like, I guess they were tired. They just wanted the sea for their own. So they went on the aggressive and they conquered Eritrean land. We were defensive, we were never offensive, and we went to the international court. They said that the land belonged to Eritrea, they demarcated the border, and Ethiopia signed a binding agreement saying like, okay, we're gonna leave, that's it. But until today, since 2001, they haven't left. So it's like no peace, no war situation, it's just like stalemate. Like there's just nothing going on.
Just like neutral, like it kind of calm down.
Yeah, I mean it is war, but there's like no offensive on any side.
So it's kind of like a Cold War almost, right?
Exactly. Exactly. It is exactly a Cold War, and the people are very, very like patriotic. They really like respect their country, but at the same time, there's like a big brain drain going on, and it's pretty sad. But my country is technically one of the most secretive countries in the world. I'd say it's even more secretive than North Korea because like not that many people know about it. But I guess with today's technology, internet, you get to see like a lot of pictures coming out of there, and it's not like as closed as North Korea, but it's not easily accessible to foreigners. But at the same time, I'm sure time will change with all this UNESCO World Heritage site allocation and all that. There's a lot of like good hopes, but for the time being, I guess the best way to describe the situation is it's kind of a suspended reality. Like it was all going well and fine until like shit got messed up with Ethiopia. But I'm sure as soon as the situation is resolved, we're gonna be like back right before the war started, where it was just all peaceful and like prosperity and growth and all that. So there's like a lot of hope for my country, but for the time being, we gotta keep it like together. Ethiopia's in shambles because the ruling party in Ethiopia is an ethnic party that's only like around 7%, 6 to 7% of Ethiopia, and Ethiopia is around like 107 million people. And what's really messed up is this small ethnic group has controlled almost all the power in Ethiopia, and there's ethnicities such as the Oromo and Amhara that are around like 30%, so that's like 30-something million people that are controlled by a few million people. And these few million people don't only control like the economics, they control the military, they control everything in the country. And their ultimate plan was to actually separate their region from Ethiopia and take over parts of Eritrea. But now like their whole plan is exposed. They've been like going on with deception story after deception story on Eritrea. That's why like we've been blackmailed by Ethiopia every day, but the Eritrean government never responds because they're on the right side. They never did any wrong. Ethiopia comes up with like a really messed up story, and like recently one of the biggest things was they closed down one of the Muslim schools, and some of the students protested, and it was a big story all over the world where like Eritrean government is like against Islam, they're closing Muslim schools and all that. It was huge chaos like internationally. But when I actually like got to talk to people from back home, they told me like every school that is in the country has to work by a certain curriculum, and if they don't abide by the curriculum, they're going to be forced to be shut down. And there was a couple of schools that were running that were just religious schools. There was an Orthodox, there was a Catholic, and there was Muslim schools. And there was two Muslim schools. And they were told to either like they were gonna have a directive given to them by the Ministry of Education, and they had to follow the national curriculum because every student that comes out of 11th grade and goes for their military service has to be as knowledgeable as everybody else. So it's an equal playing field. But they weren't following any curriculum, and they didn't want to hire a director given to them by the Ministry of Education. So by law, they were forced to close down. But the story was twisted to kind of show to the world that like, oh, Eritrea is against like Islam, like Eritrea is doing this to its Muslim population. So like, I've grown up in an environment where it's so peaceful. Like, I'd say everybody's happy with the situation, although it's a suspended reality, as I said. But everybody has hope. Everybody knows that Eritrea has potential and they have a bright future coming. But they know in order for that to happen, there has to be peace. So the Eritrean people have just been waiting patiently. And they haven't been like aggressive at all. You don't see it in our news, in our propaganda. We're never like aggressive against Ethiopia. It's always Ethiopia aggressive against us. And crazy part, we're never even defensive. We just keep our mouths shut. And it's even better because like whenever it gets to the UN Security Council or whenever it gets to the big heads of state, they're always like, yeah, they're going to tell the story that they got from Ethiopia because they didn't get any story from Eritrea. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Wow. That that sounds super complex.
Oh yeah, it is a very complex country, man. We've been messed up like left and right.
Yeah, I was like completely ignorant of like post World War II after Italy's occupation. Like I didn't know what happened after that. I didn't know that was like a 30-year kind of revolution thing.
And that's what I tell people, like, imagine a country such as Ethiopia where they've been free for a very long time and they've had emperors, they've had communism, they've seen so many types of parties, of ruling parties. They've gone through so many like culture changes. They've managed to adopt through time, and it's more of an open society. But when you look at us, I'm a second generation of a country. My parents are the first generation. My parents' generation came out of war. They grew up watching torture. They grew up watching murders in the streets. It was awful. When my dad gets to tell me, like, I used to walk to school and every day I used to see people hung in the soccer stadium in like lines. When he tells me like my uncle was dragged through the whole city with a tank. Like, they're the generation that freed the country and they're the generation that like are starting a new country. Do you think they're gonna be that free? Do you think they're gonna be that open to like change and all that?
Yeah, man.
They're gonna be very protective of their country, of their kids, of their future. So like you can see from like our culture how our country works. We're like self-sufficient people. We don't take in any aid. My president in my country has taken in no aid from anybody. Nobody dies of hunger in Eritrea. I've never seen anybody die of hunger. Sounds crazy, but like our neighbors, people are dying of hunger in Sudan, Ethiopia, Somalia. But how is it that nobody dies of hunger in Eritrea? They've taken like so many provisions. While the ruling party was taking money in for aid and dispersing not the whole amount, they were taking in something for their pockets, most definitely. The Eritrean government, like, it sounds ridiculous, but they were building a dam. It's like one of the biggest dams in the country. And guess who built it?
I have no idea.
Civilians.
Jeez.
So imagine they're building a dam in like freaking Quincy. So how they build it is, okay, Brookline, it's your turn. So they take every working adult from Brookline and they go to the dam and work for a whole week. And then they be back. And next, it's Jamaica Plains. And they take Jamaica Plains. And they did that with the whole city. And everybody had to work. Everybody contributes. There's like some ridiculous things that are done in my country that like would never happen anywhere else in the world.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like it's like a really tight-knit community. And like people are obviously giving, like I grew up in New Jersey, which is like known for having potholes. Everyone just bitches about it. No one actually does anything. Like it's so foreign in the U.S. at least to have the concept of like just regular civilians building a dam. That's wild to me.
Imagine, okay, let me make this even more interesting. So, do you think you'd be able to give every working adult in the States an assault rifle and think they'd be responsible with it?
In the U.S.?
In the U.S. Or anywhere else in the world.
Fuck no, not the U.S.
So, every working adult in my city has a gun. Not only a gun, an AK-47. Handed to them by the government. And how it works is everybody had to do their training. It was like a 6-week training, something like that. And after they were done, they have to do neighborhood watch, or they have to guard like a bank. They have to serve somehow in their city or in their neighborhood. And you'd think people would be shooting each other left and right. By the time I had left, there hadn't been any like actual fatalities from these guns, except like 2 or 3 suicides, which.
Yeah, I mean that's tragic, but
Yeah.
like, how do you prevent? That's a question.
And I actually asked my mom. I was like, "Mom, has anything happened since I left?" And she told me it's only been this one guy who actually got fired from his job, and he actually like went psycho. He killed his wife. That was that they divorced like a while ago. He killed his daughter, and he was about to kill his boss. But he was camping in her office for like 3 days, and
Jesus.
they caught him because he was hungry, and he asked the kid to buy him something. But that's like the worst it's ever gotten.
That's the
worst it's ever gotten. And there's around over like 100,000 people, I say, that have AK-47s.
Wow. So then, how do you think, like, just as a totality, how does that culture compare to like the U.S. and like what is your experience in like seeing, you know, parents, you know, this is like not even like a full generation away, having experienced like war and like being like seeing bodies hung, compared to, you know, people in the U.S. who probably have never seen, like I would argue most people in the U.S. haven't seen a dead body. Like it's a stark difference. So how, I mean, that experience definitely shaped who you are, right?
Oh yeah, true that. But the one word that like clearly explains my people is respect, I'd say. There's a lot of respect. Like anything, guns, they respect the gun like there's no tomorrow. They know what a gun can do. They're not gonna mess with a gun. Like, if somebody is caught in the act of like something bad, the worst that'll happen to him, even if somebody has the sights aimed at his head, they'll never shoot. I've heard of like people escaping police and all that after they've committed some crime in the street. The worst it ever gets is they get shot in the leg. They will never shoot above the waist. That's like one of the things that like they like drill into your head when they're training you for the gun. So I guess it's respect. Like we respect the older generation. We recognize that like the generation before us, our parents, our grandparents fought for the country's independence, and everybody respects it. There's everybody knows that the country has a future, and they respect that. It's a weird vibe that's in the country. Like the people I guess like believe that they have something in the country, and they're not gonna let go ever. There's just too much history and there's too much in the country to just let go like that, to just give away to Ethiopia, because Ethiopia believes that Eritrea is part of it. They've never they still to this day don't concede that Eritrea is a sovereign nation. Eritrea is an independent country.
Yeah.
They believe that Eritrea should be like part of Ethiopia.
I mean that sounds very similar, and this just like, I don't know. I mean, it kind of parallels, but like my father, he's from Taiwan,
Mm-hmm.
and you know, like Taiwan wants to declare sovereignty, and I believe for some time they had a seat on the UN, but then there was some negotiation, and basically the UN folded. It was like, yeah, okay, sure, whatever. We'll just not count them. We'll just not recognize them as a country, and so I personally haven't experienced that kind of life because I was born here, and the immigrant experience is, you know, a generation removed from me. But I feel like that resonating thing that I've definitely experienced with people who travel from, stark differences from the US with like, extreme, it's just like war-torn countries, like there's just like tragedy and tyranny and like there's just gratitude, like it's like my parents are super appreciative of the opportunity that the US has given them,
Oh yeah.
And like me, like I'm a bum sometimes.
That's what I tell my friends. Like there's this weird thing I always try to explain. When your parents came to the States, it was a totally different situation. They didn't have nobody to support them. They didn't have nobody to send them to college. They had to grind their ass off.
Yeah.
They had to go to college while working 2 jobs. When my dad tells me stories about him in LA, it's ridiculous. I'm like, what the fuck am I doing here? I'm just being a lazy bum, just going to class. Everything's paid for.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There's a huge generational gap. Like when parents try to tell us like, you should do this, you should do that, and we kind of ignore them, telling them like, you don't know what's going on today. Like, this is our world. This is like, we know better than you. Like, we might know like technology, we might know things, but we don't know life.
Yeah, they know life.
Exactly.
Sure.
Like, who are we to be 21-year-olds, 22-year-olds, to be saying life is shitty? We haven't gone even through a quarter of life. You get what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
man.
How the hell can we assume like, I have anxiety, I have this? Like, I'm sorry, like this shit happens to people. It's like, it sucks, but like you've got so long to go. Like, this is just the beginning of the beginning of the beginning.
Yeah. I mean, like, I don't know if you know, but like my major was neuroscience, and like the prefrontal cortex of your brain doesn't fully develop until you're about 25. There's actually new research showing that it might be as late as 30. But your prefrontal cortex is the area of your brain that is associated with like logical reasoning and like deduction. That's why like when you fuck up and you go, oh my god, and you hit yourself on the forehead, it's like subconsciously like, you're oh my god, come on, brain. And it's I completely agree with you, man. I mean,
man, it sucks. I try to like think about it sometimes, just reflect on it, and I'm like, bro, this generation is really kind of messed up. They don't have the respect that the older generation had.
I think it's different though, because I feel like a lot of people, if they're born into a more cushy life, which is, I mean, obviously what our parents are like, what they worked hard to ensure that we would have a more comfortable life.
That's I mean, it's kind of like saying like, yeah, the parents. You could say like, yeah, the parents shouldn't have done that. Like, you created this monster kind of thing, you know. But at the same time, like, we gotta be a little bit respectful. We gotta like, kind of see where they came from, kind of relate. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's going back to your conversation that started all of this. That's what the American kids are missing, I think. Like, when you get to see all those kids coming from outside, there's this thing that you can't. It's kind of hard to recognize, but it's just respect.
I think it's gratitude, man. I think it's honestly just like gratitude of like your situation, and like maybe it's just that like we've had such a close second-hand experience to like, holy shit, this is what hell could be like.
Exactly.
That we're like, oh, this is like a cakewalk. Like, I got an exam, I did bad on an exam, whoopity-doo. But again, I don't want to like send the message out that like, oh, just because someone else is having it worse than you shouldn't feel bad, Like, one of my friends, he explained to me that like a lot of the backlash, like when someone is depressed and you tell them, oh, like, why could you be depressed? You're so privileged, like you have this, and this. Like, it's kind of like, it doesn't make sense in the same as like if you were to say, oh my god, today I had the best day, I'm so happy. And if some asshole came up to you and was like, hey man, how dare you be happy? Some other eye out there fucking won the lottery, okay?
Right on.
So like, without a doubt, I think the US does have its own problems, albeit it's weird and like totally like twisted with the internet, right?
Oh, yeah.
But
I mean, it's not like all of the US is like that, I guess it's a case of rotten apple.
Yeah. Well, I mean, without a doubt, gratitude is something that I definitely try to like be more mindful of like, oh my God, I'm on a train. Like, can you imagine walking this distance?
Mm-hmm.
Or it's just itty bitty little things like that. And it's like, if you look at history and you like, even if you just read history, the written stuff, the stuff that's already edited, it's pretty terrible. And then you tell me events like, you know, your hero going and taking a shit in front of Mussolini. Like, there's so many other things in history that we're like ignorant of because it wasn't recorded. Like, history could be way worse than we thought it actually was, or it could be way better. You know, like, there's just a complexity that like we don't grasp, and I think that it's short-sighted to just solely focus on yourself and not take in the macro picture.
I'm on that side.
Yeah.
But yeah, like going back to that, you always say like, oh, you're so nice. Like the
Dude.
first time I came to your house, like you were so hospitable and all that. I guess it comes from that. Like I'm really thankful for where I'm at. Not that I don't like. It's not that like I'm not trying to be selfish. I'm trying to give as much as I can and all that. I'm really grateful for what I can, for what I have, and I want for everybody to feel the way I feel.
Yeah.
And it's weird, but anybody that comes to my house is like a guest that I will respect and that I will like take care of. Even though I hate that person, I'll hide my feelings and I'll do whatever needs to be done to like make him happy. Maybe I'll change his train of thought on me.
Yeah. I mean, the idea of hospitality is definitely something I feel was like totally lost. I mean, like now it's like, good fences make good neighbors, you know? You don't really know your neighbor too well, and you're not really like, if some guy knocked on your door and was like, hey, can I crash you for the night? You'd be like, no, fuck no, I don't know you, you know? But it's like, my first exposure to the idea of hospitality as being held as like one of the top values was actually when like I studied Latin in like in high school, and one of the stories was with Bacchus and Philemon, and they're like an old couple. And so Zeus or Jupiter, depending if it's like Greek or Latin, comes down and he poses as like a guest, and he comes in and it's like it's written in poetry, and it's like Bacchus and Philemon, the old couple, they like, you know, take out their best livestock, and they kill their best livestock. They prepare the best meal. They take the best cuts, the best bread, and they treat, you know, like Zeus or Jupiter to this meal, and after the gods leave, they're like, okay, thank you. You know, you've given us what little you have as, you know, as the value of hospitality. And then what happens after is that there's a great flood that wipes out that specific village or area or whatever, and Zeus or Jupiter or whatever comes down and brings Bacchus Philemon and says, hey, you should come with me for a hike. And they go to the top of the mountain. And because of that, they're spared. And so, like, that story, the fact that it was, like, written into, like, Roman and, like, Latin poetry, just, like, really echoes what kind of time it was, you know? That, like, people were so spread out and scarce that you needed a community to really survive.
It's like, for me, it's a generational thing. Like, when my parents tell me, when my grandparents tell me, it's, you've been to my house, right?
Yeah.
You know how it's open door?
I love it.
Have you ever encountered my door locked?
No.
It's always open, and it's been like that even in my house in Eritrea. With my parents, with my grandparents, they've always had guests. I cannot spend a day without having a friend in my house or a guest in my house. Not that I'm like, I feel lonely or whatever.
It's just like a norm. Like,
exactly.
It feels weird without...
Exactly. I need somebody to... I always have some friends like that are always there to chill with me, to just talk, just chill about, and it goes back, way back in my family, and it has to do, like, one of the things they do is coffee. Coffee is one of the biggest traditions in my country, and they drink it mainly to gossip around. And it's a ladies' thing, but they just sit down and they'd brew the coffee, and it's I don't know if you know, but coffee actually was invented around our area. So it comes from like Ethiopia and Eritrean area, and we brew it like back how we used to brew it back in the old days. And they just gossip around, and the males are like in the other room. They usually like play cards or whatever. Nowadays it's video games and podcasts. But yeah, coming to the States was, I mean, I was exposed to the States. Luckily, I used to come here like every other summer.
Oh.
I was pretty exposed to the States, but for somebody like me to come from my country and be exposed to the States is like a big change. I was lucky enough. I knew good English. I was kind of updated, although like I had to link up with like one of my friends, and I was like, "Yo, give me a list of all the shows I need to watch to catch up, like all the hip music I need to listen to get to like get on track." I mean, it was freshman year, but I did what I had to do. I had to binge watch Game of Thrones in a week, and
Yeah.
but it was a good experience coming to the States and seeing it. But it's completely different environment, different people, different kind of treatment of people.
Oh, for sure. I can see that. How does the pace, you know? Like I noticed with different countries. I mean, maybe it might be like specific to cities that there's kind of like a different pace. You know, like Boston is pretty kind of casual, but it's a city, but it's more on the smaller side comparative to like New York, where like the beat of New York is a lot faster, almost overwhelming for some
Just
people.
the people walking around in the streets.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I'd say like U.S. is one of the more laid back spots. No, Eritrea is one of the most laid back spots, and coming to the U.S., you see that in order to survive, you actually gotta hustle. But in Eritrea, it's more governmental work, and since it's more of a suspended reality, it's more of a laid back lifestyle. People do their work, but there's not that much like hustle. You're not gonna get the job that you want. You're not gonna get the salary that you want. But as soon as the times change, I'm sure it's gonna be for the better, and people are gonna get what they actually deserve. But you'd be surprised. Eritreans that go abroad are some of the fastest learners, some of the smartest people I've known. I've had cousins that have gone straight from Eritrea and have graduated out of MIT, like straight out of Eritrea. I'm not talking about like coming here, going to college here, and going to MIT. They went like straight to graduate
Like
school
just
to MIT.
catching all the subjects.
Exactly.
Like no,
Yeah.
like Americanized.
It's very sharp people, and that's why I keep saying like there's a big future ahead for my country.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like it based on what you've said. It sounds really helpful, and I definitely share that sentiment that like when everything clicks together, you guys will boom. You know.
Oh yeah, it's just the situations have all been against us, especially with like Ethiopia. They have lobbyists all over the states, so technically the U.S. is like against us. They will never support us. We only have like one senator in all of the U.S. that actually supports us.
Oh wow.
He's the senator from Cali. Let's go, Dana.
Yeah, I mean, my experience as an American is like staggeringly ignorant of world events. So everything that you've said is complete news to me. Like I don't know what that's like to have parents grow up through that experience. What their teachings would have affected you. You know how that affected your childhood. How that affects your relationships with people. It's going to be completely different from somebody who was born and raised in the U.S. You know.
Oh yeah, just think about like what they teach you at school. Like what history did you learn? Just like give me like a 30-second history from like the beginning until the end.
British people came over. Americans got pissed off about tea. Bunch of presidents.
That's your history,
pretty much
and
it,
you
yeah.
probably like went over like the World Wars, the Cold War, and
but
all
it was yeah. I mean, those are incredibly dense topics. You know, any of the world wars is going to take a lot of depth to actually analyze. I don't blame high school for brushing through it. I mean, I'm sure like a history major would have a better substantial understanding of it. And of course, history has multiple different perspectives and sides, and there's also always the unwritten history.
Oh yeah, but like one thing that I usually like to emphasize on, like I'm not hating on America or like American history and all that. Like every American should know American history, but at the same time they should also be exposed to European history, African history, Asian history.
Yeah.
And going to high school, I was actually forced to learn all of that stuff. And I was forced to learn Eritrean history. On top of that, when you learn Eritrean history, you're forced to kind of learn Ethiopian history at the same time, the history of the region, and with like going to school and being exposed, hearing stories around the city, not only do you hear like about the States or about Europe, you get to hear like about a lot of stuff going about in Africa, and although there's not that much internet, that much media, like stuff manages to get around and people manage to learn. It's not like we're illiterate.
Yeah.
Like there's books, there's everything that people need. All you need is one computer with internet access, and
Yeah,
that's
amazing.
how it works. Like you'd be surprised. My brother actually gets to watch Game of Thrones episodes in Eritrea the day after the release.
Oh wow. Yeah. I mean that's like the positive side of the internet is that we can get super interconnected. But it's just that's kind of like Pandora's box, you know? I mean, without a doubt, I would say a lot of people probably waste their time on the internet. They're not really like looking up history and stuff. But I mean, I totally... I remember when I was taking like AP US history, and I was a kid, and I was like bitching and moaning to my parents like, oh my god, I have to memorize all these presidents, and I have to like know this stuff. And my parents sat me down, and they put me in my place. And they said, Stefan, we had to learn 10,000 years of Chinese history.
Exactly.
And it's just like, it's so staggering that like there's such a difference. And I don't know why it's so, you know, specific to just learn your own countries. That seems ignorant, especially when we're so interconnected right now.
Oh yeah.
But that's a lot of information, man. Can you
It is
imagine
a lot
like,
of information to digest. Like, you don't want to come out of high school being a history major. You know what I mean?
Sorry,
guys. But at the same time, you gotta make it like pretty comprehensive. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
not like go America. Like, I'm sure when it came to the world wars, like that you learn, it was mostly from the American side. Like, the story kind of started when the Americans went in. Like the story, it's when the American involvement gets thickened that like the history that you learn at school gets deep.
Yeah.
We had to look at it from the Italian side, from the German side. I went to an Italian high school.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I managed to learn about like all the European history. For literature, I had to do. It sounds ridiculous, but I had to read all of Dante Alighieri's books.
No, that makes like. So just relating with my father because he grew up in Taiwan, and like it was at the time very heavily influenced, like at least for like when his parents were there, heavily influenced by like Japan because you know Japan occupied Taiwan during the war.
Mm-hmm.
So like a lot of the culture like spills over, and I completely get that. Like you had to learn like Italian, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
you have to learn that perspective. But I think that definitely expanded like what you because you have your own personal experience. You can see their other experience. You know, learn about other ones. Understand like oh, this is like a multifaceted kind of situation here. You know.
Yeah, it's I'd say when it comes to exposure, there's a lot of stuff lacking in the States.
Yeah.
I've met like people from New England that have never been out of New England, and it kind of sucks. I'm sure they have like the finances for it, but it's just not practiced.
Yeah, you don't have a concept of like the world.
Exactly.
It's, and we live in a global
all you need
world
is
now.
just go to Canada.
I don't know if Canada is necessarily. I mean, all love to Canada, nicest people ever. But I don't know if that's like the best like culture trip.
That's the closest. I mean, it's only like a 4-hour drive.
Yeah.
Like, forget New York for once. Just go out of your country. It's
Yeah.
not like you're gonna die. And like when you get out of your country, just don't be like American as fuck.
That's hard for some people.
I know.
That's hard
I
for
know,
me,
that's
man. When I like visited Hong Kong, everyone could tell I was American because everyone was in like a sweater and like you know the temperature difference. And I was there in like gym shorts and tank top, and they're like, "Oh, that's the immigrant. He's the one that doesn't belong." And I'm like, "Shit."
With me, it's kind of different being a skinny, lanky, tall African. When I was like, the story was when I was going to Naples. My aunt was like shitting her pants. She was like, "Ermias, keep your wallet in your bag. Keep your watch your bag in Naples. They steal a lot. They do this, they do that." And I'm like, "Okay, I'm gonna do this. Okay, I'm gonna do that." As soon as I get to Naples, I get off the train and I'm like, "Bro, these guys probably think I'm one of them, just trying to make a living out here. But like I've used my Americanness for a while. I got in trouble a couple of times in like Dubai.
Yeah?
Yeah, I got a guy. One of my cousins was trying to get into a nightclub, and they're like making big fuss about it. And I had like my Dubai ID, but as soon as I pulled up my like American ID, they were like, "Whoa, American! Okay, don't ever do this again. Okay, bye, good night."
Really?
Yeah,
They just like straight out deny you?
exactly. Yeah, I mean, like you'll get a lot of perks for being American, but don't exploit it. Like,
Yeah.
I've been to places in Italy where like I just go into a store like check stuff out. And they'd be like, "Oh, look at this American," in Italian, and I'd be like, I turn around, and I'm like, "I'm not American." And they'd be like, "Oh, scusa, non t'avevo visto, scusa." But no, I got a lot of different looks, man.
Well, I mean, that's not a bad thing. I mean, I definitely think that that's one of your positive qualities is,
Yeah.
you know, being able to fit into these different...
It kind of sucks being a question though.
Yeah. I mean...
because you can never skip a class.
There's
There's no. There's the color contrast in the class is not looking too good.
No, man. I mean, if you're paying for it, you should probably go, you know. Don't get me wrong. I've definitely skipped classes. Not proud of it. I've missed an exam because I skipped classes. Holy hell, that was a nightmare, bro.
I'm like scared for my life that day's gonna come for me. I know sometime that I'm just gonna skip class and it's gonna be an exam.
Dude, no, don't do it. Just don't do it. Or at least, like, write down when the actual exams are. Because I didn't do that.
But I'm so confident in myself, I don't want to write that shit down. I'm like, I'm gonna remember that shit. Fuck writing it down.
Oh, God. I'm so confident. Yikes, man. So then what do you ultimately want to, like, obtain out of business? Like a business degree?
Man, it's gonna sound a little out of this world.
Go
going
crazy.
and all that, but my dream is to open up a restaurant.
Ooh.
I know it sounds kind of crazy. But
No, dude,
I got like a small restaurant going in my house. Like I'd be feeding people. I've been dry aging steaks in my house. I've been making some ridiculous food, fried chicken with special ingredients from back home. So in order to start up this restaurant, this ultimate dream of mine, I want to apply like my business skills towards startup.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a spice that they use in Eritrea. It's one of the most common spices. It's also used in Ethiopia too. It's called awaze. And
delicious.
exactly.
Amazing.
I want to start out by rolling out a line of sauces.
Wait, how do you spell
Awaze is spelled AWAZE.
Okay, that's so cool. You say Z, not Z. You notice that? Like,
Yeah.
Americans say Z.
I don't know. It's weird.
I don't know why we say Z, but like we say Z. I know everyone else in the world, it might be like foot and meters, but
I guess I've been saying that for my whole life.
oh, that'd be so cool to say. I just feel like it'd be really weird for an Asian to say Z.
Yeah, I've been trying hard to adopt the way of saying H.
Dude.
You know how British people say H?
What, like H?
H.
H?
Yeah.
H, yeah.
I'll be saying H.
That's weird.
Pass me the HDMI.
But okay, so this restaurant is, I mean, don't get me wrong, that's a beautiful dream. I have friends who you know, are involved in the restaurant business, and it might just be because I'm super gluttonous and I love food, but it's like a phenomenal enterprise because it's so, like, food is just like good for the soul, you know what I mean?
And I don't know, it's not, I don't want to open up a restaurant where it's like serving a customer kind of thing.
I think you want like a hospitality
Exactly. I want a restaurant where people actually try out my stuff, try out my cooking. It's not gonna be like a fast food, or it's not gonna be like a casual restaurant. It's gonna be it's kind of like what do they call the Japanese restaurants where it's like you get served the chef.
Okamase?
Yeah, okamase.
Yeah.
Where you get served only the chef selection.
Yeah.
Something in
Yes.
that kind of realm, you know what I mean?
Dude, that'd be dope.
But yeah, like talking about the spices that I use in my food, they're spices local to the region. You can make them out here, but the ingredients are barely available.
Mm-hmm.
So the basic awazes, they start out with 5. They call them 5 awaze, 7 awaze. And how it goes is like the 5 awaze would be like the lower quality one. So they have the basic ingredients such as like chili, garlic, oil, salt, and they'd have 5 spices on top of that. So it'd be the 5 awaze. And then there's like a 7 awaze, and like the holiest of holy awazes is like the 13 awaze, and that's the one that my grandma makes. And I'm telling you, man, people actually go to her house and ask her, you know, like how you go to a church and ask for holy water, because like bless us with the holy water and all that. They'd go to my grandma and be like, "Can you please give us some of the waze?" Just like
some of the waze. I
just
love
like
that.
good half an ounce will make them happy for like a while.
Yeah.
Because it's like a pasty solution. I'm telling you, this thing has the potential of becoming the next sriracha.
Yeah,
Easy.
for sure. Because I've definitely tried that at your place
Oh, yeah,
before.
we've tried it with
Was that a 5 or a 7?
With the diced bread. That's a 13. I got it straight shipped from Eritrea.
Okay, because that was unbelievably. Oh my god, it's so good. I would totally go to a restaurant with that.
I'll try to remember the ingredients and I'll try to shoot them out in a little bit. But my brother actually went to Dubai to check out the spices and all that, and my grandma was there. They went to an actual spice market, and they saw all the spices. He took down a list of their prices, how much he needs to put in for the waze, and I think he came up with a list of around like 20-something spices. And out of those 20-something, I think 3 were local to Eritrea and Ethiopia probably, and that they do have a Latin name, but there was no way that we could find their translation in English.
Yeah. And so where, ideally, would you want? Like one establishment or a chain establishment? Because it almost sounds like you want to elevate it beyond restaurant, more to like experience. You know
exactly.
what I mean? It's kind of like, I don't want to compare it to like a hookah bar, you know what I mean? But it's like experience where you go down, you relax, you socialize, you feel taken care of, you know? Like it's the missing theme of hospitality, which I think would definitely appeal, especially in the States.
Exactly. So like my home bases are Boston, Dubai, and Eritrea, and I'd like to start out in those 3 cities. And just like you said, I want it to be an experience. I just don't want it to be like a restaurant that could pop up in any city and it just be the same food, same everything. I want it to be like, I have so many ideas that I could ultimately even like put a utility pattern on.
Oh my god.
And like I've been really thinking about like what I really want to do with my restaurant. And since it's gonna be an experience, it's not gonna be just like a restaurant. I'm actually gonna have the ability to protect my ideas and my like creations in the food industry, and it's crazy. That's a restaurant, a line of sauces, a waze, probably even like a cayenne pepper type from a region called Mitmita.
Jeez, how do you spell that?
Mitmita is spelled Mitmita. Mitmita. Yeah, our language is weird.
No,
we have one of the most complicated languages in the world.
I don't know what is your language?
It's called Tigrinya. So it's a mix between like the origins come from Aramaic. Aramaic is I think it is the original Hebrew language, and it's they say it's a Semitic language in easy words, and it is the only language that has its own alphabet in all of Africa. So every African language either they utilize the English alphabet.
Mm-hmm.
While Eritrean and Ethiopian languages, Amharic and Tigrinya, they're called Hermetic, and
that's the same. That's the school of where all this like school of thought.
Oh, like Hermit? Is that
Hermeticism, like as in like Hermes? But also like it predates Rome and Greece,
like alchemy stuff that we were talking about.
Exactly.
Oh, that's
so
sick.
Yeah.
Okay, you want me to tie down like more history into this?
It's pre-Hebrew too.
Yeah.
It's the pre-Israelites.
So let me tell you this.
Man.
So this whole story, like,
yeah, man.
I used to hear stories. I used to hear stories of like a city in Eritrea that was like buried and stuff, and it was like I used to think of it as a myth because like we never got to learn of it in history because there's like no discoveries, no like archaeology behind it. All we got to learn was like there was the oldest traces of Homo erectus were found in Eritrea.
Yeah.
The oldest
Whoa.
Homo erectus was supposed to be dated back to around 100,000 years ago, something like that. But with the Eritrea, no, actually, it's way more than 100,000 years ago. What am I talking about? But with the Eritrean discovery, it got pushed back by like a lot. It was the oldest traces of Homo erectus ever found. The oldest hominid ever found was just right by the border of Eritrea in Ethiopia. Lucy was found in Ethiopia.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Holy moly.
The oldest Homo erectus skull ever found was in Eritrea. There's a lot of history dating back to hominids, but coming back to like modern times, I used to hear of the city. So when I went to China, we're in Guangzhou, and no, it was actually Hangzhou, and we were just visiting, and we were like, okay, let's just visit museums. So first we went to the Tea Museum, and then after that we went to the Silk Museum. So when I went to the Silk Museum, there was this huge map, and it showed the Silk Trail from way back in the days.
Mm-hmm.
And it showed that it touches base on Eritrea and goes from there through the now dug Suez Canal all the way through Europe. So it was written Adulis, Adulis. It's this port city that used to be in Eritrea that they just uncovered, like just in the recent years. They just dug up a whole like church out of the ground, like a whole monument. It's not a church, but like a whole monument out of the ground, and they believe there's a whole city around it. And this is all tied back to like the floods, the Atlantis and all that. This dates way back before like everything, like Mesopotamia and all that. And they're just starting to like scratch the surface of all of this. And if this gets discovered, it's just gonna push everything back. It's just gonna change the history of like Eritrea and the region forever.
Yeah.
There's like a lot of history, even when it comes to like religion. The first mosque in the world was built in Eritrea.
Really?
I'm not like people correct me if I'm wrong, but when the Prophet Muhammad left the Arabian Peninsula because of persecutions, one of the first places he went to was the port of Adulis. Was the port of Massawa back in the days, and they actually built a mosque. His followers built a mosque in the region before any mosque was built, before even Islam was recognized in the Middle East, and a mosque was built. A mosque was built in Eritrea.
That's crazy.
There's a lot of things that are just like dug up, nobody talks about. Like even in the Quran.
What did you say the port city that is being uncovered is called?
Adulis. Adulis.
How do you
It's
spell
spelled
that?
Ulis.
Lis. And
That's that old world, man.
it's crazy. There's sites around Ethiopia that are just like megaliths, stone structures that are just ridiculous, and people can't understand how they were built back in the days. It's impossible. Right. You need some kind of technology, and these structures were built like it was nothing. There needs to be something to explain it.
That's crazy. Oh my god.
So like when I don't know, it's kind of weird, but like Eritrea has like a lot of history. Like I was just saying in the holy text of Islam, the Quran, they actually mention the so-called Bahr Najash. Bahr Najash in the Eritrean language, they used to be called Bahr Nagastat. Bahr Nagastat, it translates to the rulers of the seas. And since these kings used to live in the highlands, they used to basically overlook the seas, and they used to be like the protectors of the sea, the kings of the sea, of the Red Sea. And there's a story in the Quran about a certain king in Eritrea whose name is Bahr Nagas, and in the Quran he's mentioned as Bahr Najash.
Wow.
So there's links left and right, like all over the place, and to get to the end, Ethiopia keeps saying like, "Oh, Eritrea is part of us. Like, we're just one." They will never recognize our history. They will never recognize like that there was a civilization out there. Like it might have been like a big Abyssinia at one point, but like today's today. Like times have changed. Like you can't just like change borders just like that.
Sure. But to learn about the kind of like the history of such an old, important city and the fact that your city is now built on the same foundation even is just an interesting. That's really brilliant.
And it's a trend. Like you've probably heard of all this new like archaeological trend of these floodings that occurred in they say in like before even the Mesopotamian civilization was founded.
Yeah.
And that could change the modern like train of archaeology. Like it's gonna change everything, and people are gonna deny it. You're gonna have everybody that's studied archaeology and that has preached it all over the world. They're gonna deny it obviously because you're telling them that everything they said their whole life is basically a lie. You think they're gonna take it easily? No. What are you gonna need to prove them otherwise? You're gonna need evidence, and that's what's popping up all over the place. There's places being dug up all over North America, Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, that nobody can seem to explain because they just don't want to admit it. Adulis in Eritrea. There's just spots popping up all over the world that just people can't explain because they just don't want to admit that civilization existed like a while ago.
Right, because it protects a way of life now if it's of like the same school of if you can like trace it back to we know this, we've documented this, and therefore it is the way it is now. It's kind of like I don't know, it shifts the fundamental understanding of like where we come from a little bit, which like I get that people are adverse to that, but also keep shifting.
Change eventually has to happen.
Change comes, yeah.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
It sucks, but like you have to recognize like that the world is not just a fairy tale, like
which is fantastic and very important.
But yeah, times are changing, man. It's just weird times nowadays. I don't know how to explain it with like all this technology, all this social media, everything. Like when I came, I imagine the only thing I was exposed to is Facebook and kinda Instagram. I used to post like just a couple of pictures and I used to follow a couple of people, but that was pretty much it. When I came here, like I had Snapchat was like just came up and everybody was hyped to Snapchat. Yik Yak was out.
Oh, Yik Yak died, bro. Yik Yak died.
Yik Yak was lit at one point, but I mean, there's so much. It's just moving so fast. I don't know what the next generation is gonna look like. What the next generation is gonna think like. I don't know if they're even gonna appreciate the past.
What do you think could be like done about that? Like to remember the past. What do you think is a good way? Especially when like I'm not gonna be able to Google these things.
Mm-hmm. You're probably gonna be able to Google everything. You're probably gonna be able to think of anything, and you're probably gonna get it in front of you in a projection.
Yeah, I mean, like reading a Wikipedia article isn't gonna be the same as like this discussion,
Oh yeah, you'd get different points of view, but I guess you can't change it. Honestly speaking, I guess you just have to try harder to educate people. People have to get to be more exposed, I guess. I'd say like I've been playing Fortnite, to be honest with you.
It's a quick game.
I've played with 40-year-olds and I've played with like 6-year-olds, I guess. And you see the difference. Like the 6-year-old is actually like into the game and he's not willing to budge from his couch. They're not trying to move. And after they're done with that, they're probably gonna go on their social media and after they're done with that, they're probably gonna go on YouTube. You know, it's just a constant cycle of just like. I'm not saying like it's not like good information, but it's just like a waste.
Information.
Yeah, it's just a loop of information that's not like good for you. I guess it's not. It's not. You're not learning. You're not learning anything. Imagine like you'd go to Africa, just sitting down with somebody and him telling you a story is a totally different experience than just like watching a YouTube video.
Yeah, of course.
Like, you think you're gonna remember that YouTube video in like 10 years? Or you think you're gonna remember a conversation they had with someone?
I guess it depends on the YouTube video too.
Yeah.
But also, I do hear what you're saying. It's like, that's the question of like, can you truly, like, is living in a bubble living at all? If you're just getting an IV feed of like information and you're never actually engaging or like shifting your understanding of the world, right? Like experiencing something new, like in person, you know, like you're going to a new place and experiencing something with someone who you're experiencing something with another person and learning a new perspective that you didn't have before. That's not exactly the same thing as just being fed sort of information that is compliant with how you already live your life. You know, say you're not usually changing your outlook so much when you're checking your Facebook or like playing a video game, or I mean, I guess it also applies to the video game.
Yeah, it depends.
But like,
I mean, I guess the dilemma that we're trying to hone in on is that like a lot of people's context is through fantasy and not necessarily through real life interactions.
I guess that's one of the things I was just thinking about and I wanted to point out. I'd say like people have to kind of shy away from just interacting with their phones and computers and laptops. Like, it's a great idea to have Tinder and like meet chicks and all that, but at the end of the day, it feels weird for me. I grew up in a country where you had to like try hard, man. You had to be romantic. Bro, you had to take a girl out, you had to impress her,
That's
you had
the
to talk
human
fancy.
element.
that was life.
Exactly. Like,
And then what happened?
imagine I have to come here and all I have to say is, you trying to smash?
Yeah, honestly. Oh man.
3 words is all it takes? I can't do it.
No,
I can't. I don't find any like excitement in it. I don't find anything in it.
I think that's why when people like say, "What do you look for on Tinder?" It's like, "Oh, I look for an interesting bio." No, you don't. But you do look for someone that is interesting and engaging and in like in an inventive way in some sort.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You want someone who's actually going to. No one wants someone who's. I mean, no, I won't say no one.
I won't. Yeah, I would argue most people.
Most people don't want someone who's just literally just, I don't know, making themselves available in the needs that you want to satisfy when you go on Tinder. That's like prostitution. What you're looking for is someone to like engage with, someone to like, I don't know. There's reason like, in all those like Jane Austen books, they're like doing like wordplay quips back and forth. Like, you want someone to like spar with. You want someone to like engage with.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
there's something about the human connecting that is part of, I don't know, courting, the chase, like falling in love, whatever it's called. But like, there's a process that is like establishing like a language, and like a back and forth with the person to see if you guys can share an energy. And people are like, I don't know, we're losing the ability to share an energy with the person.
Exactly, and it's not. This is not manifested only in like love. It's manifested in every way, and one of the like worst ways is like anger. Like bullying online is the stupidest thing ever. Yeah. Like, okay, somebody can write something. I want to see his emotion on his face, 'cause that would make a big difference. That guy's probably writing the rudest message with like the saddest face ever.
Yeah, man.
And like, you're like, somebody can say whatever they want online, but I want to see people like say that face to face. Will they be able to say that? And that's ruining things. 'Cause like when you see somebody write that, you automatically think like, this guy would actually go out to the public and shout this thing, and like But in reality, this guy wouldn't say anything remotely to that.
No way. You know, it's just the fact that, like, with the internet, any YouTube comments, you can pretty much expect the worst of people with zero repercussions. And I think that's definitely shedding light on, like, the worst aspect of people, right? It's like, oh, I know I can get away with it, you know? And I definitely agree with just the general sentiment that we're kind of losing the ability to connect and to, like, share expression between each other, especially when it's so easy as, like, double tap for a like. Oh, so and so must be into me, or so and so must like me, or, you know, it's weird how we have like a digital stock.
You know, what I tell people is, I'm not like I'm not living in like the Stone Age where I don't like comment on stuff or anything. You know what I mean? But at the end of the day, like, I believe we're like us in our, from I'd say like the 17, 18-year-olds, 16-year-old, probably some 15-year-olds in the States are like the last of a generation that actually had like real social interaction growing up. And for me, in my country, it got to like the worst of the worst. Like, we had points in time where we had like no electricity for like a good 2 days. And trust me, those were some of the best times of my life. Because you just got 2 lit candles in your living room. It's just like all the brothers in the house with like a couple of friends. You're just chilling. You have the most down-to-earth, real conversations. I'm sure no kid ever has that in the States. It's kind of sad, but like, I'm sure somebody has that, but like...
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
It kind of sucks. Like, we're the last generation to like grow up playing board games, probably. Like, nobody plays a board game. Every board game you play on your phone.
Oh, baby. I can launch it, but I'm not going to...
You got what I mean? Like,
yeah, I mean, like...
I was trying to tell my cousin that we play Dungeons and Dragons, and he's like, and I was like, listen, like, why are you on me? I'm like, our parents, okay, think of your parents, okay? What the hell do you think your parents grew up playing? And he was like, I don't know, they didn't play no games? Yeah, they had this game, they had Dungeons and Dragons, they had their mind, they had their adventure, they had their creativity. They had a master that was narrating a story, and they had to be creative, they had to come up with whatever, they just had to close their eyes, and they used to play like Super Smash Bros. You know, that it's not that, like,
yeah.
I'm sorry they don't have Nintendo, they don't have the Wii, they don't have the PlayStation, but they had their brain, and they could play a much better game than whatever you're playing nowadays.
Yeah. I mean, I know my experience with that was that I didn't really get cable television until I was in like 8th grade. And like video games were like here and there. I didn't get allowance. I didn't have a job. I was a kid, so I couldn't buy video games, and I would just bum off whatever games my brother had. And I remember like one of the crystal clear memories I have, and one of the funnest times I've had, was when Smash first came out, and like me and all my friends would just go on like the playground on the jungle gym, and we would just like pretend that we were characters and like shoot fireballs at each other and swing on monkey bars, and holy fuck, that was so much fun. And that's like way more fun. I mean, Smash is fun, obviously, but it's like there's something about that I think is missing, is that like,
because you're engaging, because it's you, and you're engaging in like you are collectively agreeing to engage in like a high stakes version of this reality that you like want to live in, right? Like, you're all collectively agreeing as a group, and we do this when we're playing D&D too. And I'm so glad you said that, man. Because when I said I could launch in, I was literally talking. I was like, you're talking about, you know, living through an imagination and fiction and narrative, and that's like, I love D&D, and I could go on about this all day.
So just for context, Josh is a DM. So, like, you should totally join a campaign with me.
I'll be down.
Yeah, dude.
I'll bring the dice. We'll actually get some real dice.
Yeah.
Bro,
yeah, dude.
We'll make it authentic.
Dude, he has a bag of dice.
There's a bag of dice, literally, where is it? It's, like, probably under that table.
Yeah, I thought
There's some dice here.
Is it the 20 face dice?
Oh yeah, obviously.
Nice.
There's some dice here. I know we knocked some dice over when we were throwing them. Yeah, right here. Or I mean, this one was the one that was.
Ben told me you guys used the.
Well, I mean,
cell
Ben
phone
and I
dice.
do because we're new to it. But
Right.
yeah, my character sheet's right there, dude. Oh my god.
Nice. We
Yeah,
used to have character. We actually drew our characters.
that's
Oh yeah.
Sick.
See, that's. Oh, there was in my first game, I played with a girl who was like an artist, and she like her style was like a really I loved her like cartoon style. It was very Adventure Time-esque.
Oh, that's
and
dope.
so like she drew, during our first campaign when I was like 16 years old, like drew pictures of our characters like doing things from the campaign or like from that session, like little scenes or like little pictures of the group as a whole. Yeah. And so after the session, there would be these little portraits of our characters from scenarios from the night, and I always associate D&D with like drawings of the characters now. It's super visual for me because of that experience early on, and I think I do enjoy like the new character sheets, but I think there is something useful in having a visualization of the persona that you're playing out this world in, right? So enough about my experience with D&D. How did you start playing? You said that's something that you played when you were a teenager?
I didn't play it when I was a teenager. I actually started playing it
now?
pretty late. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's when I recently came into the States. One of my friends actually invited me to play D&D, and I didn't know what it was, and I honestly like kind of ignored it.
Right.
Until
Everyone
I
does
saw.
it first.
No, I didn't know what it was. Honestly, I
Yeah.
didn't ask. I was just being ignorant. It all came together when I started watching Stranger Things.
It's a great show.
And as soon as I saw that they were playing Dungeons and Dragons, I was like, okay, I want to play Dungeons and Dragons. But yeah, like, no kid probably, like, not that many kids probably play D&D because they'd be considered nerds. And like, one of the things, I'll relate back to my country. Growing up, we used to play like games, and it was, they used to be periodic, like within a year, you'd have like a period of the year where like a certain fruit grows. And this fruit, it has, it's really hard on the outside. It has a hard shell. You have to beat it with a rock, and you remove the shell, and it has like the sweet outside shell that you eat out, and it has another like hard shell like a coconut that you can crack, and there's like this nice like round hard like core thing. It looks like a big seed, and what kids do is they poke a hole in the bottom. They put like a big screw, and they turn it into a top. So you'd actually play like you play like you use it as a top, and you play that they'd have different games, and the other season would be marbles. So every neighborhood would just be playing marbles.
Yeah.
And then another one, you'd get bottle caps. So what we used to do is get bottle caps. We used to smash them flat, and then fold them in, and you'd have like half circle.
like a taco.
Exactly. And we'd make like structures out of it. We'd like make belts and all that. And it used to be like seasonal games. We used to have like a lot of seasonal like stuff. Like whatever comes, you just make something out of it. And what's crazy is my younger brother, that's only younger than me by 7 years, he doesn't do any of this. He just plays games because he doesn't think that's like what cool kids do.
Yeah.
I guess that's what it is.
Yeah.
Like, cool kids don't play D&D. They play Fortnite.
I feel like there's like an element that like
The engagement in the interpersonal that we're talking about.
it's not even that. I feel like you need some engagement in nature too. You know, like I don't think.
Maybe it's because it's maybe it is nature, but it's not quite nature. It's not quite. It's like aspiration for something, right? Like you're playing the game for like a greater purpose, like to serve a narrative or to serve like because you want to like, I don't know. If you're playing D&D, if you're playing these games like pretending to do Smash Bros, it's not necessarily because you want to win or like you want to. I don't know.
I think you just want to.
There's like a higher element that you're striving for.
I think what you're doing is effectively like wanting to play out a drama.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And that obviously has, interpersonal connections, but I also feel like I don't think you're gonna get the same kind of abstraction or it's not the same like building or digging a hole in Minecraft as it is like actually having your shovel and digging holes outside on the ground. You know what I mean? There's a difference.
Yeah, there's like ingenuity in the kinds of games where you're turning whatever you're given that season into this like world, into this like elaborate sort of, I don't know.
You know how you can explain it easily? Just look at it this way. So like games, it'd be you playing with your hands, and it'd be the game interpreting what you do into like a vision, and that's what you play in.
Like video games.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But when you're doing when you're doing the impersonations, when you're doing like your Dragon Ball Z, like Kamehameha and all of that, you're basically, your hands and like your actions are like playing the game, but your brain is the actual video game that's like in its own world, playing a game, relating with your friends. Like, you feel like he's shooting a fireball. Like, one of the things, I just saw that lightsaber over there. Bro, the amount of lightsaber wars we had with my brothers. He touches your arm, like your arm's gone. He touches your leg, you gotta fight like on one leg.
It's very high stakes. It's
So many lightsaber wars in my house. Ridiculous. You think people would like, kids nowadays would have as much fun with lightsabers as we did?
I certainly hope so.
I wish they do.
Yeah.
I wish,
I
but
hope they do.
it's gonna be probably like a 5-minute thing, because they can probably go on a fucking VR kit, and they can have much more fun on a VR kit and battle with like a real Jedi. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but it's not, I don't know how I feel about that, because it's like in the VR world, it's already constructed for you, you know?
Exactly. The game constructs it for you, but in reality, it's your brain and your brother's brain or whoever you're playing with that's just in a game, and you guys are just like playing, like everything around you is just like the environment. It's just a game.
And you learn how to cooperate within that, especially because you are encountering someone else who's also building the world. Like, you learn how to engage that way, to engage and to coexist and to collaborate and to work towards something together, or to work against each other competitively in a way that is like still, doesn't break the social boundaries.
Yeah, like Catan, right?
Yeah. Yeah, you're conditioning yourself, especially when you're like doing these things with your friends and like actual other people, not like a simulation of possible like dialogue menus that you can like follow in a video game. Like my problem with the simulated, VR thing isn't that you're not having an experience, but that it usually doesn't actually put that much responsibility on the player. It's usually in this like simulated experience, the player, the audience member is gonna like get one of a few responses anyways, and it doesn't really matter much what they do or how they've been acting. It's like sort of predetermined, and it doesn't actually take much responsibility to take action in like a video game, but it does when you're like working with people in real life.
Talking about that, like, I wish there was like way more of these games, and they were like way more like intricate, is the games where you narrate your own theme. Where you actually start a game and there's like so many branches that you can branch out, and like you basically develop your own story. I feel like those games can relate more to to our reality, but I'm sure the kids don't enjoy it because like they want to have the same ending, they want to reach the same trophy, the same goal. Like, I want to have the top score.
I hope not. I always loved choose your own adventures, man.
Exactly.
Like, since
how much better can it get?
Schools players, that would be one of the first things I would like run towards. It's like,
I think the main difference that we're kind of chipping away at between a virtual game and one that is imaginary is that when you're playing it out in real life, you actually have to like negotiate the rules with the people you're playing with, right? Like I could be like, oh, I'm Ness, I froze you. Then some kid would be like, no, you didn't, fuck off, you missed, and you negotiate the boundaries. Okay, fine, okay, I missed this time, next time I'll get you, and it kind of teaches you the complexity and like the boundary that you can push with other people growing up, and you gotta get a sense of like, okay, like this is the game that we can agree to play without too much like predestination that you would get out of a VR headset.
Right. And it teaches you a lot. It makes you like way more mature. Like you understand people better. You're better at like decision making. You're better at negotiating, and it's weird, but you can't do that in games. Like you can talk over the party.
Yeah.
You can shit over people, but that's pretty much like the most you can do.
Yeah, and I don't know, maybe it's just like more reconnected with the real world, and I guess it depends on the level of fantasy you have in the game. But like most sports, right? You would, or even the lightsaber battle is restricted by your actual physical limitations.
Exactly.
And I think that's something that a lot of people playing video games miss out on, because you just start with like a starter kit. Oh, I'm the soldier class. Oh, I'm the assassin class. Exactly. And you don't get you just earned it. You don't actually like, you don't identify with your physical self. It's almost like disembodied. I think, Josh, you totally like are against, like, I mean, I know you always tell me like, no man, you're too cerebral.
Yeah, I think the physical, like knowing how to be a physical being in the world is really important too, because it teaches you how to actually physically coexist in a space with other people, which is also really important. And like we can't forget our physical selves, mind, body, spirit connection. Wow, I sound like a trope of myself. But I do agree that there is something really important in that abstraction that comes as well. And I think on top of figuring out how it is you have to like behave, you use your own behavior to coexist with other people. It's also like you gain so much in creating with another person, in playing Super Smash Bros. With another person. Your friend might try to use a move that Ness has in a way that you never would have thought of throwing ice before, or countering with like, I don't know, it's just some like creative like 10-year-old bullshit that is like that actually does change your line of thinking a little bit. That's like, oh, that's something I never really considered before, and you become more creative as a result, and because you are sort of negotiating the creation of this world together, you're finding out how to collaborate, which provides way more possibility, like endless possibility. The most like, I don't know, sometimes I feel like the most creative thing to do is to like encounter another person, because it's a totally different perspective.
And not only that, I think it's also just like when you encounter another person, it's like you have to treat it as equal value or equal contention. Like if you encounter a non-playable character, you just smash the A or X button until you get past the dialogue, and you're like, fuck this guy, I don't care, okay, what's my mission? Alright, cool, now I'm just gonna go and slay the dragon and save the world. Instead, in real life, when you play, I think you have to like really set the boundaries. Like, oh man, like if I don't set the rules right, this person's not gonna play with me. They're not gonna cooperate with me. And I think that's like a huge difference, is that in a video game, it's engineered so that you basically have a pretty linear path.
Exactly. And one of the things is when you set the rules, it's kind of like you want to make it easy for you to win, but at the same time, you're not going to want to make it too easy for your opponent to realize. There's like a lot of like train of thought that goes in the mind of like a little kid. He's like, yeah, I'm trying to do this, like let's make the rules easier for me, but like I can't cheat. Like thinking of cheating and all of that. Imagine all of that going through a kid's mind. But like you can play GTA, you have all the cheats, you have everything that you can unlock, the storyline, what you can do, everything's available. It's kind of
like the you can do anything.
Yeah. Cool. It's kind of like you're a bully. Like you basically get to set the rules and like you get to dictate the game. Like, there's no, like, single individual experience in playing it. It's just a common shared experience, and I think that's what's kind of messed up. Like, I love games. I freaking love games. And I love it because there's other 1,000 people that love it the same way I do. But at the same time, like, everybody's playing the same game. And I don't feel special. I want to feel special. Like, the only way I can feel special is if I'm probably, like, the best of the best in the game. But if I play D&D, I can be the best in my own world, and my friend can be the best, and it's never like everybody can be the best. Like, it's
and it's also different.
It's a individual tailored experience.
Exactly. It's different. It's your world, your person that you are in this whatever allegorical, fantastical version of our world, because of course the world that you are playing in D&D is a version of your world, because this person that you're playing is some version of a truth that you know to be true, or playing out. You're playing out an idea of ideas that are present in your and our own world, as of course we do with any, like, I don't know, anything we create, right? But you get to play that out, and your D&D experience is exactly, it's tailor-made, it's yours, and it's different from anyone else's.
Exactly. Nobody can probably come up with the same thinking with the same story that I come up with.
And even if they do have a similar character, the way they play it would be entirely differently, because just different people.
Yeah, you're an individual. And I don't want to freak either of you out. But once you graduate and you get, like, kind of settled to, like, post-graduation life, like, the most exciting and equally terrifying thing that you can realize is you can literally do whatever the fuck you want. Like, you want to travel the world? Save up. Do it. You can do it, right? You have the liberty to do it. I feel like it's somewhat of a disservice to go through the education system and always have, like, a track planned out for you. I mean, obviously, I'm a weirdo. I like, the more complex the problem is, the more I'm attracted to it is. And so...
You like those 5-headed dragons.
Yeah, I do, dude. I love chaos, dude. But it's just like, I was always followed by the books, go to high school, get good grades, cool. All right, get into college, check that off the list. Go to college, okay, do good enough that you can get a job. Okay, cool, check that off. Now you have a job, okay. And now I ask my parents, what is the next thing that I need to do? I don't know, it's your life. And you guys just, like, what do you want to do?
What do you want?
And then, the open-ended question of what are you going to do for the rest of your life? And you don't have to know it or, like, have it sorted by the time you're 22 or whenever you graduate, but it's just, it's a big question, And I feel like the interactions you have playing as a child, negotiating, interacting, cooperating, competing, all these things would actually help you in navigating your life after you escape, I suppose, the standard system, right? After that, what do you want to do? You want to own a restaurant? Go for it.
It's kind of like you're playing. You start a game and you have to set your own rules. And just like when you were a little kid, whenever you were playing a game, whenever you had to do something with your friend, you had to set the rules. You had to say, like, this is my end objective. I want to beat this guy. I want to do this. These are the rules I gotta abide by. I guess that's what you're up to nowadays. You just trying to decide. I think kids gotta realize that change is imminent, and I think it's up to them. I don't think we can force anything on them, especially like with today's generation. I feel like they're more stubborn than ever. And like you tell them something and they're gonna be like, "Get the fuck out of my face, you old piece of fuck," you know?
Do you think so, or were we like that?
I like it, man. I mean, they're not gonna get to play the Nintendo or the Sega Genesis. So like, I've done like so much more stuff. Like they don't know what a VHS is. I was in court last semester. My professor was asking like, what was the like before CDs, whatever. He was asking a question about cassette tapes. Yo, nobody knew what a VHS was. Nobody in my core class.
It's kind of interesting how like certain tech has like certain, almost like a timestamp. Yeah, like an abstraction that's like tied to it.
That's Walkman replaced by iPod. I mean, that's the thing. It's like you got to get on the side of. It's hard because you have to be on the side of technology because technology, like you said, the world is always changing, and you have to be with innovation. But we have to find that balance of like how to be innovative, but also staying connected to our humanity and each other, and not getting lost in the machine.
It's all about finding the right balance. I guess we were raised on the more like social side than the technology side, but we kind of grew up to shift more to that technology side. But we also got to see the social side, so we've got to see the like best of both worlds. Yeah. Before us, it was all social, no technology. After us, it's all technology, no social. So that's why I was saying like we're the last kind of that generation that I guess we have to kind of bridge the gap. And that's why I was trying to force my little cousin to play D&D, and he was like, "This is some like nerd shit for real." And I'm like, "Just keep playing, man. Just be creative. Just like be in your own world, man." And he wasn't into it until like he really like he got out of like his comfort zone. He stopped like thinking like, "Yeah, I don't have my friends around me to like judge." He's in his like own game. He has his own like imagination. Like it's kind of like Clouds, where you just like gotta come and like fit in comfortably, because he was just like a Tempest that just didn't want to go in. It was just he thought he was gonna ruin everything, or he thought like we were gonna think like, who's this kid? I don't know if it was like if he thought that we were not gonna like him, or if he thought that like he didn't like this game so he couldn't play it. There was something he had to get over with. Mm-hmm. But as soon as he got over with it, I'm sure it's something very simple, but as soon as he got over with it, it was just easy goings.
Yeah.
And he was actually like enjoying the game.
It's fantastic. Well, a lot of people, I know, it will take them a little bit to get into D&D, because the first time there's a lot of, depending on how people heard of it or what they know about it, there's a lot of expectation involved, and there's a lot of, I think I know what this is, or trying to play a game in a way you think it's supposed to be, or because you've like seen it on TV.
Murder hobos, right?
Yeah.
Which like is basically when people just try to kill everyone in the game to get to the end. And they quickly realize that, like, hey, you can't do that. The King's Guard is gonna fuck you up.
It's before people understand kind of what it means to be like a person in a world where your actions have consequences.
I wouldn't even say that. I think it's also just like a majority of D&D, or surprising chunk of D&D, is dialogue driven. It's not even combat.
I mean, it depends on your game you're playing too. My games tend to be very character heavy. And as a result, just because there's a battle map down doesn't necessarily mean the only way out is fighting. It just means that like I'm visually representing the scenario in this way that is I've decided it's beneficial to show with like graph paper in this moment. But like that doesn't mean you just beat the big bad guy until he's dead and that's how you clear the level. It's like you can engage with people socially to try to, come to a solution for the problem. It's not all axes and like, I don't know, attack magic.
So then, like, do you think that the idea of negotiation, or at least like compromise, is somewhat lost when you're playing these video games where you just smash the A button until you get past and just like hack and slash?
Oh yeah, definitely, because there's no negotiation, because you lose a game, you're able to restart immediately. It's not like,
yeah, that's right.
You made a mistake and like learn from it and you can correct it and you'll pass the level next time. You don't go through the experience of like negotiating. It's not like you immediately start over. You're gonna try to look for like other paths, if you can go one way or the other, if one way's safer or not. There's always like a second, a third, or fourth alternative, and it's up to your creativity, up to your imagination. While in a video game, it's like a set story. You gotta follow what's written, and it kind of sucks because it drains the people of imagination. And that's why like Fortnite is like, I'll mention Fortnite because it's kind of interesting because
there's a creative aspect to
exactly
it.
And
I don't know the game. I haven't played it.
So it's basically a game where you drop into a map. It's 100 people, and it's a random storm that appears. It's circles that start shrinking, and they shrink in random spots, and you drop in. You loot crates, you loot buildings, and you get weapons, shield, and all that. And the creative aspect of it is that you can break down wood, like buildings, get bricks or metal, and you can build from like walls to flat surfaces to stairs. So like if somebody's shooting at you, you can just build something, like you can build a big tower.
It's like Minecraft.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Like Minecraft with
guns.
With guns.
Sick.
But it's interesting because you can build like a wall and like block yourself off.
Yeah.
So you won't get shot anymore. Build a ladder, and it's crazy how fast people can build stuff.
Oh, yeah.
They just
And
they just build like a tower instantly, and then they like snipe people off.
And what's interesting is like talking about negotiation, like working with people. One of the things is you can play in squads, and once you play is you loot and you got extra shield. It's like, hey, you talk on the mic. It's like, hey, I got extra shield. Anybody needs some? Somebody comes and you give them shield, and it works like that. Like anybody need ammo, like you need a gun, and like you're helping each other out. Like
communication.
Exactly. It's I like the game because it bridges like a lot of things from like stuff that you expect to be in games but it's not in games, and you're like, how the hell did nobody think of this game before? And this game just pops out of nowhere and is just the biggest game in the world. There's around like 4 million players active on average. I think it was like 3.4. It's probably higher right now.
Yeah, I mean, if anything, I think that just acts as a testament that people are kind of craving the imagination and the cooperation that you would get from playing at your like middle school jungle gym or whatever, you know. And interestingly enough, there's another game that when you were mentioning how when you die at a save or whatever, you can just respawn. There's multiple games coming out now where it's like if you die, you have to like have a new character, just start from scratch all over again, and I think that's kind of acknowledging that the appeal to the game of life is that like you could die, right? Is that you have one try and you're always all in, no matter what, you're all in. And that's something kind of lost when you can just say, I fucked up, pause, reload the last save. So it's interesting. I mean, it's really cool how games are evolving to kind of necessitate this this need that we almost have.
Yeah. Well, because otherwise, it quickly, I think, arrives at the sort of very dominant perspective within like meme culture right now of like, well, what's the point anyways? It's like if the I'm gonna die a million times and I'm just gonna like keep trying the same thing and not really give a fuck how many times I die mindset is almost the same as, you know, realizing, oh, life has no meaning and therefore why should I bother trying? To me, it strikes a
No. I
sort of pessimistic
I see that.
chord.
I can see that. I mean, I've already even discussed just in general. Culturally, we're kind of hitting like a rock bottom nihilistic point where everyone's kind of bleeding out messages of death through memes.
Do you see that? Do you see much of that?
Yeah, do you see that? Like a lot of memes are like, oh, I wish I was dead or some shit.
I haven't been exposed to that side of the world.
Oh, bless. Maybe it's just my circles.
That's good.
I try to keep positive vibes around me.
That's good, man.
I enjoy that. I think that's the right. Yeah, because it's enough awareness that enough awareness to not be naive, but also having the strength to live for something.
But yeah, that's why I like to keep people around me. It just keeps me more engaged, more connected, feeling more positive. And I just believe that you just have to live in peace, happiness, and everything's just gonna fall in place.